25 years of the same steady hand, finding the ones who fell through the cracks of the plan. From Mitcham to Croydon, from London to the world, every flag he planted said, "You matter, you're heard, but there's a man who finds you in the car."
Yay! Here we are again, Christina, and we're also live on LinkedIn. Yay! So we're also live on YouTube as well. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I think we've been pretty consistent, minus a couple of times being on every couple of weeks here.
Yeah.
And today's topic is all the topics that we've been talking about follow under, this umbrella topic of escaping the 9 to 5, or if you have already escaped, keep on building. So that your business stays sustainable and grows.
Yeah, look, I'm totally with you. I think a lot of people miss the duty on founders. Maybe especially those who are just starting off, right? I think a lot of people want to have the fun and they forget totally that the job is getting clients. Sorry, that's the job. Everything else is neither here nor there. If you don't get clients, you're sunk. So it's always good to talk about how what our friends can do more to, like I say, either to start off or to start growing or continue growing. So I'm always interested in the conversation. Miss Latifat, how are you doing? My clients who we're working on her book as we speak. Glad you're here. All the way from Nigeria. I don't know why this thing does that. So okay, welcome. So Lady K and Lady J, they're here as well. So you want to go on their show, The Enrichment of Mind, Body, and Soul, Christina.
All right.
It's a 3-hour interview, by the way. So, and it's US time. They're on Beijing TV, Beijing radio. So then they're having a radio station behind them, and where you get broadcast. Of course, they stream as well. Yeah.
Interesting.
Apart from that, they're amazing. They're amazing people. They're extremely passionate about what they do, just helping others, and they're just lovely people. Obviously, I like them. You can hear that, right?
Well, that should be the mindset. When we approach relationships on this platform, we have to assume that everybody is a lovely person. We cannot really be judgmental or judge from a profile that might be completed, updated, or not. There's always a human being behind that profile, and that's where we need to go if we're building businesses here. Really realizing that we're not dealing, with static mini landing pages with a banner and a few pictures. So we really have to realize that that's what's going on. There is an individual behind the profile, and if we can reach out and have a conversation, that's where it was gonna stabilize things. But today's conversation is exactly that, right? How to turn conversations into clients. And I ran a poll recently, and the poll was about, how do you run your business here? What do you rely on the most? And I kind of had a tricky couple of answers on the poll on purpose. One was I rely on inbound. My content is what brings me, visibility, right? And the other one, I completely and solely rely on cold DMs. And then there was other for people to have a discussion or send me a DM and see, what techniques we end up adopting. The thing is, it's not just one thing. You cannot just rely on one thing. If you were, for example, to rely solely on inbound, and if you're starting out, if you're new to this, it's going to take some time before the right people find you and the consistency compounds in a way that people are actually coming to you. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but that's a long game that you have to activate the moment you decide to utilize this platform to drive in leads, but you cannot rely solely on that. The other the other thing is, so what do I do? Do I just go and send a bunch of messages to people and ask them, well, this is what I do. Are you interested? I mean, some people do that, right? But if you've been browsing this platform for a while, you probably are realizing that there is a lot of skepticism going on, and mistrust, people being on or starting with being defensive. And the reason why this is happening is because people are bombarded every day with messages and DMs, and some of them are completely AI generated. So people are getting to know and beginning to understand, if a message is coming from a real person or a message is something that has been generated by AI. And usually what's happened is that people are realizing on these AI assistants to do their outreach, and the messages are very generic. Then they show that whoever is messaging you never actually clicked on your profile, and they got your name through a lead, perhaps through Sales Navigator or some other data mining application, perhaps from Apollo. So there are so many ways to get leads today, right? So if you're a user of LinkedIn, like we all are, whether you're running your own business or not, you know what I'm talking about, because we all receive those messages. And your time is precious. You only have a certain amount of hours during the day where you're running your business, and that you're dedicating either to creating content or creating outreach. So the first thing that we must do is really assigning roles to all of our activities and understanding what is our ultimate goal. And he just said it, right? So let's be clear. If you're running a business on LinkedIn, well, not on LinkedIn, but if you're utilizing LinkedIn for your outreach to generate interest in your business, you you really have to talk to people. I mean, you cannot just wait and see that it's not a shopping cart. Nobody's just going to come to your page and see, well, let me purchase let me purchase this service without having a human interaction with you. So the first thing that builds that trust is when you actually have a conversation with somebody. Now, conversations are not necessarily you having a booking link and everybody booking calls with you, and just to introduce yourself and have conversations, the classic no pitch coffee chats. Conversations need to be based on context. That's why it's never just one thing, but it's a multitude of actions uh, that generate the spark that starts the relationship. Do you want to add anything, Annie?
Things that give me a headache. They drive me really mad. But today, I'll get over myself. It's all right. Right. Mr. America, we see you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let me try and get the name right now, because you showed as LinkedIn user. Piroska V. Welcome. Say hello. It's great to be here. Look forward to the conversation. And also, Dr. Natasha, I see you as well. Welcome, all of you. I don't think we've spoken. As you're saying, Christina, look, we're in the age of relationship marketing. But a lot of people still fall for the old cold marketing techniques, right? They really do. You know, I had an interesting one today. I'm going to mention this one because all the generic ones bore me to death. They really do. Are you going to ask me about my business, or are you going to start doing questionnaire with someone? I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Connect with me. Let's meet. You're going to talk to me properly. But of course, first of all, come to one of my events. Don't talk to me otherwise, because that shows me you're interested in what I do. If you're going to be to help you only, I don't want to talk to you, right? So the one I got today, it was just a phone number. So now I'm obliged to, as I replied, I'm like, what do you have in mind? This random phone number? What am I meant to do with it? I'm not going to call you randomly. I think a lot of this conversation comes down to the reality that we have to must jump into people's lives to disrupt what they're doing. There's an issue of timing. I've done the cold DMs. I built a whole career on LinkedIn doing cold DMs. But let me tell you now, my friends, in those days, there were no limits how many connection requests you could send a day, a week, a month. And I was sending 300 connection requests per client per week, 300. Today, you can't send more than 100 connection requests a week. And if you send 100, LinkedIn will block you. You're going to end up in LinkedIn jail, like it or not, because LinkedIn will know, simply because people are not responding to your connection requests. When you send more than 50, LinkedIn will be like, stop doing that. You'll be like, what? They'll be like, stop doing that. I got that. One day I woke up, all my accounts were blocked. I had 35 client accounts and they were all blocked. But now we got them all released from LinkedIn jail in the end, right? No, but so you can't. The cold DM thing doesn't work anymore. We need to find a way to drop into people's lives when they need us. When the problem that we solve is a problem that they want to focus on right now. I'm using this word deliberately. People think the more people that you reach or that see you, then you're gonna get more clients. That's not how it works. When I was sending 1,200 connection requests per client per week or per month, I was lucky to get 4 or 5 phone calls from my clients. And do the maths now. So we tend to convert something like 40% on a good day. So if I could arrange 4 calls, 5 calls, I could almost guarantee my clients will sell 1. If they sell 1 high ticket offer, they're happy, they pay me happily, we'll just do it again next month. But I just told you, my friends, 126, 1,000, let's say, 1,100 and God knows, 196 of those connection requests died, got nowhere at all. And when you cold DM people, when you cold spam people, you're gonna lose 95% of those people. They will never talk to you ever again. They wouldn't, even if they see you, they won't talk to you. They're like, you're just an annoying spammer. Don't do it, right? And they just won't talk. Especially on LinkedIn, they hate you more than you think. So your other point was, sending people to. You just go to my calendar and book. No. There's a whole thing before that called know, like, and trust. If I don't know you, I'm not going to book the person sending the number. I don't know who they are, so I'm not going to book anything with you until I know who you are. So we have to truly learn to slow down and build those relationships. It's about relationships. Who you talk to helps. What helps even more is when you talk to the right person, your target audience. Person who needs your help. A lot of people miss this point in businesses, says Christina. They create a business, and you're like, what do you do? Oh, I do X, Y, Z. And you're like, who needs that? Oh, people do. When do they need it? How much are they willing to pay you for you to do that for them? And people don't think about any of that stuff. They wonder why they sit there and nothing's moving, right? Look, last I'll say, for this beginning bit, So I remember when I started my business in 2015, it was hard. Of course, it was hard, right? But I found networking. I found business networking in BNI. And if anyone who knows BNI, BNI is that's where you make money because you get referrals. You get referrals. It's a referral networking, and they're strict on it, and that's how you will judge, right? The more now, give us gain. You bring referrals, I bring you referrals. Everyone wins, right? And then my wife says to me, "We are moving across the country." I'm like, "No, we're not." The reason I said no, Christina, is because 3 years in, I was just about making friends who knew me. You know, again, for anyone who's new in business, you know, this is what's going to happen to you. You need to get known by the right people, which takes years. It takes time. You know, you might get lucky with a few customers at the beginning, but you're going to come to the same point we all get to, which is the peaks and troughs. You get a customer today, you lose a customer tomorrow, and then you have to fill the gap, right? You know, so. And I remember saying to my wife, I'm not going across the country. I need to build my business. I'm getting there. But I had to move. I couldn't divorce my wife and lose the kids, you know, just like that, right? So I was just like, no. So I've had to start again, you know, and literally it took me years to get back to where I was. Except what I was doing was different. It wasn't just networking, because people here are not that way inclined. You know, from people in London are business minded. They are entrepreneurial. People in the countryside, they're like, yeah, Emmy, I need your help. I need marketing. Of course I need marketing. Social media, I need all of that. Let's talk again in 3 months. You're like, what? I'm saying, no, literally, you know, it's a long journey, but we can be intentional about that journey. And I think, like you say, Christina, we need to talk to people. We need to know. If you don't talk to people, I don't know where you're going to go. But there's a way to talk to people that will move the needle. You know, I'm sure what you and I are going to agree, Christina, is that don't just talk to anyone. Don't just talk to everyone, because you can't. You haven't got the time. You got to work. You got to do the business. You got to do the work that they're paying you for, right? You know, so you have to talk to the right people, but also, you know, you have to find a way to get through to them that you can help them. You know, and you have to at the same time make a judgment whether they can afford to pay you anyway. Do they care enough to pay you? You know, so these are all the things that we need to do all at once. Our good friend Linda is here. How are you doing, Linda? Good to see you. Now, Linda is a true superstar. You know, if you want to learn about what Christina does, talk to Linda. You know, say, you know, Christina done magic with Linda is she's flying now. You know, again, and she only started business a few months ago, right? And she's really getting somewhere. Dr. Natasha, what's strange? What's strange? I don't know. In fact, I haven't seen you before. Maybe something else, right? So maybe I'll leave you with this one, Christina. I don't know who LinkedIn user is, but I'll look in a second on LinkedIn. Today I got a cold DM saying they help recruitment business owners. I just replied, I don't have a recruitment agency. It happens of course it does. Those are cold spam messages. Is that a bad thing?
I mean, so here's the thing, right? We all receive messages from a variety of people for a variety of reasons. People are running diverse businesses and they have diverse marketing strategies, right? So, you know, it's a bad thing if you never want to do, I mean, if you didn't ever, you know, if you never asked or were never interested in having a business relationship with a recruitment agency. So if the message completely came out of the blue and out of context, like you didn't engage with anybody in recruiting, you didn't apply for any jobs recently, you don't even read things about recruiting, and all of a sudden you get the message that, you know, straight up a call, DM, or somebody, you know, looking perhaps geographically at somebody that might need that type of service, also based maybe on their work history and, you know, job title, or maybe you just received the message because you have the open to work icon on your profile, and somebody saw it and said, "Ah, this person might need, that kind of support." So we get a variety of messages, but so I would say let's learn from what we get, right? Because we get good messages and bad messages. Sometimes I get some DMs from people and I say, huh, I have to learn from this. This actually is really good. I know what ultimately, why I've been contacted, but I also, as I'm reading here, I'm getting some value. And those are, those are the people that are reaching out to you. They're probably putting the extra effort. But for you, let's talk about you, right? So you are here on LinkedIn, and you decided that you're gonna monetize this. You're gonna build a personal brand, around you and your story and your career and everything that you've done. And your goal is to package a service. And now what? How do we tell people that I am in business, that I have this product? So it's never just one level, right? We talk about, anyway, mentioned connection requests. There was a time when you were able to send 300 plus connection requests. Now that amount is limited. It's limited, I think. I mean, after a couple of 200 a week, that's it. You get blocked. But because it's limited, this should make us pause and think. I'm growing my network. I'm inviting people to follow me. Let's start there. I'm inviting the right people if I want to grow my network. Do I already have people in my network? And are they the right people at all? How did I get these 1,000 plus people that are following me, right? Or these 500 people that I'm following? How did I get them? Who are they? Are they all friends from previous life, previous jobs? Or are they all recruiters from the time when I was looking for a job, right? Who are these people? So the first thing to do is really assess what you already have. If you have any interactions with those people, if there is anybody in your network that you already find interesting, that you see, some alignment with what you're currently doing. And so after you do that, let go of what no longer serves you, right? And then make it an effort to say, what, this person and I have been connected for the last couple of years. We never spoke. They do something similar to what I do, or they do something different, or it looks like if from what they just posted, they actually might need my support. So what do I do now? Do I tell them, send them a message and say, this is my product and this is, how you purchase it? Or do I go and say, hey, it's been a couple of years. I see that that's what you're doing now. Since we connected, that's what I'm doing now. Just have a normal conversation, explain, why you're reaching out, that you've been connected and you see some alignment, and that's it. Don't sell anything, right? But see if the person responds. If the person responds, it means they're active, they're active LinkedIn users, and great. So make it a point, make it a mental note, or actually I like to make a note on a spreadsheet, because I want to remind myself that I made initial contact with this person, and I want to do everything that I can in the next 2 to 3 weeks to actually cultivate this relationship and keep an eye on what they're doing. Are they posting? What are they posting about? Maybe I can support with a comment. Let's see if this alignment that I saw takes me somewhere. And when I say takes me somewhere, it doesn't mean it converts this person into a client. This person could be somebody that you collaborate with, somebody that you just mutually support each other by leaving thoughtful comments on each other's posts because they're aligned, and now you're sharing resources, you're sharing a network. Or it could be somebody that it ends up being your biggest cheerleader and ultimately refers you, or vice versa, right? But then now let's talk about the new connections. If you're connecting with somebody new, really think for a second. It's like, why am I connecting with this person? Well, what is the desired outcome? Am I connecting with this person because from what I see, I think they would enjoy my content and what I do. And once I connect, we could actually, start a conversation. I could point them out somewhere in my profile where I have some resources, or it's just somebody that I'm connecting to add a number. If it's to add a number, it's just it's I'm telling you right now, it's really not worth it. It's not worth it because it's not gonna do anything for you or for them. So it's really important to say if you're growing your network to grow it with a hand game in mind. Uh, Great, I want to connect with this person. Why? I enjoy their content. I like what they post. I think I can comment on what they're posting. It's all completely aligned. They get a great newsletter. Great. That's why I'm connecting with them. Fine. And you know it, right? This other person, I'm connecting with them because I see that they've been hanging around other people similar to me, and they ask questions that I do have the answers to. So I'm gonna connect with them, and I'm gonna become a support for them. So if I'm a coach, what I'm gonna be doing is coach, right? Coach in the comment, give advice, suggest, give share tips and tricks. It doesn't mean that you're giving out all of your best services out, for free. But it means now you're getting known for who you are and what to do. And the only way to get known for who you are and what to do is to participate in the conversation, whether it's a conversation that is happening in the comment sessions of a post, whether it's a conversation that happens during a live, or whether it's a conversation that happens through an exchange of messages, right? But for any exchange of messages to happen without doing the call DM, you need context. So you have to create context within your profile and with your social media presence by either creating content in the form of posts, or create content in the form of articles and newsletter, or create content in the form of polls where you ask questions and others answers, or create content in the form of LinkedIn Live, for example, because when you do a live, you're also creating content. You're creating an event page with an event description of who this event is for, and then you, after it's done, you post it, right? So all those are different forms of content. You can have video content, you can have all kinds of forms of content, but they're there because they're supposed to talk to somebody. So those are supposed to be the conversation starters, right? Or it's supposed to be a sample of who you are, and how you speak, what you talk about. That if it's in a LinkedIn live, for example, it's also recorded. At any point in time, you can share with somebody, or you can attach the link to the video itself to an article while you're discussing the same topic. So these are all what I call entry points. If you don't have the entry points, context never happens. If you don't have something that you can refer to, the conversation never goes farther than welcome to my network on LinkedIn. Well, nice to meet you. Great. Okay. Goodbye. Right. So if you have something that is aligned, something that you can use as context, then the conversation really goes. It happens to me mostly on the weekend for some reasons, but usually on the weekend, I get a lot of DMs, in the context, or either a live where I spoke, or an article that I wrote, or a poll that I'm running. And what happens is that people ask you questions, and they say, "Oh, I saw this. You know, do you really support people that are starting, with zero experience from zero?" And then the conversation goes, it's like, "Yeah, what do you want? What are you building, etc., right?" So, but for somebody to feel secure and confident, that to think that they can contact you and ask you a question, they also need the context. So you're not creating the context just so that you can say, hey, you subscribe to my newsletter, you know, this is what I do. What did you find them, what did you find interesting? I send those kind of emails. But also it's context for them to say, I'm reaching out because I was reading something you wrote, right? Or because I watched this event with you and Annie live on YouTube. So that's the context that you're creating so that you can build that relationship. Now, the conversation, what happens to it, right? Usually stays with people, especially if it was a productive conversation. And then it's their decision. Are they going to take the next step to look at your profile and to see that you are offering some services, and perhaps the book a call, and now there is a deeper conversation, a place where you meet the person one on one, or are they still building the trust, right? And so for a while they become the silent observer, see when you're posting, see when you're going live, subscribing to your newsletter, engaging slowly. So there is all that. The thing is, people don't buy when you're ready, they buy when they're ready. And so we have to meet them where they're at. But to do that, it's not just one lever, and not just sending a bunch of connection requests or getting a list of people and sending a DM with a link. Does that work? It might work, but it's really slow, and I think it damages your brand more than doing anything else, because there could be, among those people that you're sending the same message to over and over, there could be somebody there that really potentially could be a good fit, but perhaps they don't trust this type of messages, or they see this message and they think, here's another one, my box is full. Any, do you want to add?
The truths that we have. So Lady K and Lady J says, yes, we'd love to have Christina on their show. Thank you, Annie. Yeah. I've done a job. This is what I think the power of events can do for you. Look, I can sympathize with people who spend a lot of time creating content. Christina, I know you're one of those people. I used to create. My last website crashed because it had too much content. Literally, I was creating blogs, doing podcasts, doing this, doing that, and you get some reactions, but engagement, but it doesn't move the needle. Events are a whole different ballgame. Suddenly from events, so now it's a Lady K and Lady J can hear you, they can see you, they suddenly they know you, right? I think I will always promote events as a way to get to people faster than any other way. The content people discuss, look, there's nowhere I can't hide it, because yes, I've done more events than anyone else on LinkedIn, and more than they try, Kristen, they try. I see people do events every day. I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is really good. And then they burn out, so they run out of topics, they run out of content, right? So I'm lucky to have a model where I have clients or I have friends who I do events with. So it's always different topics. It's always different, different conversations that we're having. Again, I'm bringing all this back to your first point, Christina, which is why do we connect with people, Christina? Simple. We want to sell them our stuff, right? We want to sell them what we want them to be clients. We hope they're going to get the card out and pay us, right? When I say that, people forget that. What's the other person thinking? The same thing. They're not thinking They're nothing I want to buy from you. They're thinking I want you to buy my stuff. So somehow or another, You know, what is it? When I said last time, we have to make sure we're talking to the right people. Comes at the right time. It's
Mhm.
just like it's a magical. This is the alchemy of business. It's a magical thing when it happens. Most 99% of the time, it does not happen. You know, if you don't know, think of what you do every day. So every day, all of us walk past ads every day, thousands of them, online, on TV, on the streets, on the train, on the. I'm saying but we don't even react to it. To 99% of the, we don't even register in our brain, right? I'm saying that people are doing that with us as well. Now, somehow or another, we have to, you know, we have to be out there enough with valuable information, you know, content, you know, call it that, right? That's going to make people realize that, like you say, you know, you're answering their questions. You know, so a lot of people don't think about the questions that the customers are asking. They think, I got a service. Why are they buying? What do you mean? You know, no, look, I think one thing I learned is simply that, like I say, no, if you have 10 conversations, if you convert 4, you're doing really well. Yeah, you're amongst the top 10% of salespeople. That's 40% is you know, the very, very top of results that you're going to get. You know, so when we realize that, I guess we have a choice. What do? You know, you could easily work on improving your conversion rate. Like rather than converting 4, you can convert 6, but that's nearly impossible because all now the sky has to be pink. You know, the sun has to be in a certain place, and you with me, like everything has to be aligned. Do your ducks in a row, and everything has to be aligned for that to happen.
There
No,
was a
but
full moon last week.
it does happen, right? It does happen. You know, but I think, you know, I think for everything to align, the way you convert more people, you know, that's the easiest thing. That's the best thing you can do if you could, right? Otherwise, the only thing you can do is stack clients, stack prospects, stack. You know, Christina, you and I argue about the silliest things. Christina talk about systems and blueprints, and I'm like, stop talking about that sort of rubbish, right? That's about your funnel. There's a reason. There's a reason why
That's
we
a
have
good thing. That's why it's good thing that it happens on WhatsApp.
they don't see any of that, Christina, right? You know, so
Yeah, I cannot go like on the phone like.
no one sees that part, Christina. You know, Annie's a nice person until Annie starts talking work. Then it's tends to be some of person. But actually, no, we both have a point of view that's valid, right? You know, so for me, what I do is, you know, I use a funnel idea, right? The funnel concept, which is you need people at different stages of the funnel, people who are different stages of readiness to do business with you. There are some who are just getting to meet you, top of funnel. You know, they're trying to see who's this person, what do they do. There's other ones
Mhm.
who know what you do, they're interested in what you do. You know, go and look at it in the ADA model no, of funnels, right? Now you get their attention, you get their interest, and then eventually you get them to actually make a decision that they want to know more. That's when you get to talk to them, right? You know, and then they will buy at the end. Even then, you don't get rid of them. Then you have to build them up and to buy more, to buy something different. You know, I'd say so. I work on having people on all those stages. You know, so today I'm talking to people who I expect to convert in the next few months, not convert tomorrow. You know, so I know who's gonna convert tomorrow. I know the work I've got to do for the next month, pretty much, because now I do books. So I have to know my clients and have the schedule in my mind. You know, so the way to get more conversations is by constantly being a marketer. Sorry about that, people. You have to constantly be out there. Whatever your method is, you have to constantly be in front of people, working towards having those conversations. There's no way around it. You can try, so you can try and cheat the system, but it's not going to work, right? And I think one thing you mentioned, what do we say when we actually meet these people, right? You know, if I'm going to meet you and all you're going to do is try and sell me your junk, that's what I call it, right? It's not going to work. because there's stages to go through. But if I'm going to meet you and you really want to know what I do, and I want to know what you do, that's how you start a friendship. That's a conversation that we have to have. Say I don't talk about working with you until after the first conversation I have with you. Really, say I'll meet with you. I'm listening for in keywords. I'm listening for evidence that you need what I do. Are you writing a book? Oh, let's talk again. Then I can tell you how I do books. If you say I'm never going to write a book, I'm going to look at you. I'm going, okay, thanks for your time. It's been really good talking to you. Maybe if you ever change your mind, if you ever want to do events or something else, let's talk again. But show interest in what they do. Not just show interest, be really interested in what they do. Because you can't help them if they don't know if they don't know that you can help them from the conversation. You've got nowhere. If you don't know that they can help you from the conversation, you got nowhere. Look, if people send you connection requests, they want to sell you their stuff. If you don't buy, they'll never talk to you again. Strange that. And all of us could probably get rid of 90% of our connections today and feel no different at all. For events that we'll do, say we'll do 1,000 invites a week for our connection come to our events. So again, that is not a minor thing. Today is my second event today. So I've DM'd all of you twice today. You've seen my name. You've seen an event Ennie's doing. And you're here. I'm saying, no, that's just keeping the presence, with people that you want to work with. You have to be present, consistent, and when you're in front of people, they answer those questions. What questions are they asking? And do you have the answer? Sometimes you don't have the answer, in which case you say, yeah, it's not me you need. I might know someone who can help you. If you can't help them, then just be honest with yourself. A lot of people do this fake it till you make it sort of thing. When you're working with serious clients, that's not going to work. Maybe you want to build a team that can do more work than you as an individual, but that too may take time. But ultimately, we're here to solve problems, and those conversations at the beginning. If we're ever going to work together, we must talk. If we don't talk, we're never going to work together. That's what I said to my friends, right? Straightforward. If you're not willing to talk to me, I don't want to talk to you either. I'm never going to work with you. I'm all right with that. It sounds harsh, but literally, if you're forever filling that funnel, forever doing things that bring new people into your world, that bring new inquiries, that bring new conversations, then eventually that will all pay off. Not all at once, but over time it will pay off. Of course it will. If you're not doing that, and maybe I've been there where I wasn't doing that. I was just working, right? What happens is that you get a client today. As soon as you finish working with them, now what? Oh, I have to go and do some more marketing. Damn, I need more clients. I need more clients. So you end up in the peaks and troughs of business. One day you're rich, tomorrow you're poor. One day you got lots of work, tomorrow you got nothing to do. But constant marketing, a constant flow of people, constant conversations with the right people, that goes such a long way. Let me work with more of my friends, and I'll come back to you, Christina. Mr. Cyrus, I see you. How are you doing? In good health. But Cyrus, you know how hot it is here today, so it is hot, right? So Queen Leah, so I see you as well. And I say one of my amazing co-hosts on Motivation Monday podcast. I just had someone reach out to me a year later, just professionally disengage and follow up. Christina, that's an interesting one, right? But hold the thought for a second. I'll come back to that in a second, Queen Leah, right? Sometimes, I agree with you there. Sometimes we need time to germinate for relationships to build. It's what's germinating really, because from day one it was like seeds.
Planting seeds, yes.
Yeah, like the seeds must grow, and we must tend to the seeds as the plant starts growing.
Don't overwater.
Right? And don't let it. Don't go. Be like me and kill every plant that you ever come across. Right? I do that quite a lot. Quilia says,
Yes,
okay,
I
building
agree with that.
that really is the point. That is the beginning of, and it is thinking whether you're going to use my words, the funnel pipe, or Christina's words, pipeline, or blueprint, as in, any of the ecosystem. She uses all those words. It's like, but it's the reason
I
why
can
she uses. Please explain why you use those words, and then we'll come back to Queen Leah's point. So I see
Oh
you,
my
Chris.
goodness,
Hold on,
yes,
hold
it's
on. I
long.
see you. I see you, Christy. Welcome. Glad you're here. I met Christy last week, so she's an amazing person. Do connect with her. If you need someone to help you build a team, which we all do, I'm bad at it. I hire them and I fire them. Everyone needs a Christy to help them to build that team, keep people doing the right things. I see you too, Dr. Lisa, our menopause genius. Glad you're here. Always. Jennifer, I see you as well. And also, we'll get to Dr. Roxana. Thank you so much for joining us. And say that Dr. Natasha was talking about somebody just sending me their number in the DM, which it's a weird thing to happen, but it does happen, right? So let me go back to Aquilia's question, then I'll leave you with that, Christina. Can I find it? Damn. Okay. Was it that?
Let's talk about that pipeline too. But
Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm looking for. My eyesight's not as good as it used to be, right? Okay, no. So now the pipeline we'll come back to. Let's talk about this first of all. So I had someone reach out to me a year later. I'm laughing.
disengage and follow up. I don't understand the what exactly what happened.
Okay, nice. I've had this happen. This happens to me all the time, right? Now, all the time. I had someone the other day. Hi, I'm like, I invited you to an event 3 years ago. You didn't respond then. 3 years. How can I help you? Knowing that I'm not going to get a response, knowing that they just, if you don't respond in a timely fashion, what a year is long enough. I'm saying 3 years.
Oh, I see what's happening. I had one actually just the other day. I was promoting a program a year ago, and then last week I received a message saying how much. And so of course I responded, but I'm still waiting for another response. So here's the thing, right? LinkedIn has changed so much in the last couple of years. And so we have to also deal and navigate those changes. We all talk about, this many followers and, doesn't mean anything. We could get rid of 90% of them, et cetera, right? But the reason why we are mentally trained to have and to grow our networks to a certain amount of followers, because we also see big creators that are, very successful. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, the follower account was everything. You had the followers, people trusted you because you had a big network, you had a big reach, especially if you could back it with decent content. Now, because the platform is overwhelmed with very generic content in general, and people saw the reach really sinking, and most people say without explanation, although there is an explanation. Everybody's starting to think, it doesn't matter anymore how many followers I have or you have, because whatever you're posting is not visible to all your 9,000 and something followers. Is that true? Yes, it's true. Whatever I'm posting is not visible to all the people that are following me, because the platform has changed. Your content is visible based on relevance, if it's relevant to what somebody's preferences and recent engagement is. And also, it's visible based on what you're doing. Are you engaging with people? Are you currently active on the platform? Have you been engaging on this exact same topic with somebody else, maybe yesterday or all week or a couple of hours ago, and now you're posting about it? All those are little signals, little impulses that signal LinkedIn to show your content to the next relevant party. So that's what's going on there. So because we cannot really count on our all those years that we spent on building those many people, that number of following, we have a job to do. We really have, before we send another connection request, we really have a job to do and see who's following me. Let me take a glance. Let me check my last 100 connections, right? And it tells you you have the date there. You connected with this person on this date and that date, and really see, how are we connected? Does it make a sense? Do some. Don't go one by one. Do some, random batches. Uh, Pick every day. I pick 5 to 6 people out of a batch of 50 every day, and I keep going down the line because I'm trying to see if it makes sense that I'm connected with these people, because I want to see if they're actually interested and they're engaging with the topic that I'm discussing. If there is some kind of activity, because that means that they will eventually see my content. And if not, and I think it's a viable profile, I'll try to engage with them to get that going. So the best thing that I found to make sense of the thousands of connections that I had, and the fastest way that I had to figure it out, are these people active, was not going down, the connection list, but it was creating content, creating newsletters. So Annie was saying that I do, a lot of content. I do newsletters. I do those because I have 3. Each one is a specific topic. And every time I publish one is another subtopic of the specific topic. What that does, it compiles a list of subscribers, and it tells me if I'm launching a newsletter today and 700 people subscribe within a day or a day and a half, I know that the 700 people, they're alive and they click subscribe. And they click subscribe, hopefully not blindly, because some people do that too, but because they saw what the title of the newsletter is. That tells me immediately these fresh batch of people that were already in my network, they subscribed to my newsletter, they're actively participating in the LinkedIn game, and they said that they were interested in this topic that I just launched, and they must have recognized my name. They clicked, right? So I'll go and engage with those subscribers, because now we got something to talk about. They subscribe. They see my emails in the inbox. The LinkedIn sends on my behalf. Maybe they even liked or made a comment on one of those newsletters. So now I'm not longer doing a cold DM. I'm engaging because they are the subscribers of my newsletter. They said yes to a specific topic. So I can message them about a specific topic. I can tell them, hey, I'm going live in an hour, because we already had a conversation. We already exchanged DMs. They already heard from me because they subscribed or because they came to another event. So that context is very important to filter your network. You cannot talk to everybody, right? And we talked earlier about the conversion rate. You talk to 10 people and you convert 4, it's great. But that's usually kind of what I do. 10 people, 5 conversion, 10 people, 4 conversions. It's usually the rhythm that I personally have. But every single person that I get on a phone call with, I either knew from an event, or they are a subscriber to my newsletter, or they voted on one of my polls, or they commented on something, or they liked one of my comments on somebody else's post. So we have context. We're not blindly sending DM to each other and one day decide to get on a call. There is a reason why we're on the call. I told them what I do. They told me what I do. We either saw some alignments. We want to discuss future, collaborations, or they say, actually, I want to learn more about this. I'm interested in this particular topic that you discussed on your newsletter, right? So then we get on a call. It doesn't mean the call is like, okay, these are all my prices, right? The call is a conversation on the very topic, and I don't have to do any hard sells on those calls. It's usually I get asked, so how does it work? How do I work with you? And then I can discuss. Well, this is what I have. Uh, but it was never born out of the blue, out of a cold DM. I'm launching this program now. I don't even know you. I never talked to you. Here it is, right? Those type of messages you reserve for those people you already had a conversation with, of any kind, of any sort. Uh, Not just that you send them a message, but maybe they responded and there was an exchange. It takes about, I like to do the math. I don't know why. I never liked math in school, but I like it a lot more now. But it takes about 5 to 6 people, 5 to 6 exchange. If it's, a conversation that started, we never spoken before. What do you do? Are you using the platform? It takes about 5 to 6 exchange with the person responding to say, you know what, let's just get on a call, right? That's what it takes. What I found that usually happens, unless the person is messaging you first and they're seeking you because they saw something that you posted. And to answer the other one of Annie's questions, why do we create all this content? Is because we are creating a digital footprint. It's no longer just within LinkedIn. It's also your content being discovered outside of LinkedIn. So the more content you have with a consistent topic, with a consistent framework, with consistent verbiage that is structured a certain way for not just human being to understand, but for the chat box to understand, the more you get cited by ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. That's exactly what's happening here. People are no longer doing searches. Some of them, I definitely use Google too. But even when you do a Google search, now you get the AI answer. You are immediately prompted to continue the conversation, or you continue your search using AI. So for AI to discover you, you have to have, written words floating out there. And it has to be consistent enough that you get recognized for that topic. That's why over, I want to say, the last 3 years and a half, I probably produced a huge amount of content. But I can tell you right now that only when I focused and I aligned everything about a year and a half ago, trying to be consistent with it, that's when I'm now seeing the results. I'm seeing, some of my things indexed and appearing and being cited in places or being mentioned by other people. It doesn't happen, this is the one. I'm doing the newsletter, I'm doing the post, and I'm visible, right? So it's a labor of love, and it takes time, and it takes consistency, and it takes you doing things deliberately. So it's not, oh, what do I post today? Now let me figure it out, right? You have to plan it. You have to plan your content. I plan my content for 3 months ahead. It doesn't mean that I have everything written down, but I have a blueprint or a roadmap of what my content is going to look like for the next 3 months. I have that because I don't want to get lost. I want to make sure that I'm consistent, and that my content is reaching out the same person more than once. If the topic remains consistent, discussed differently with different value added, it will reach the same person more than once. Back to you, Annie.
My screen's moved eventually. I don't know where I got to. There's many things you say. I'll come back to many of them. I've got a roadmap from my list of Christina's favorite words. I'm just like, no, we don't talk about roadmaps. How clients do.
But I sell one, so I have to mention it.
I think I mean, people have to understand that maybe we have different types of businesses. Christina she knows her target audience. Her target audience are, of course, those who are starting off, but she also loves to work with big businesses. Been there, done that. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it at all. I don't want to work with big clients like that, because I've always told myself big businesses treat marketing as if it's a side hobby. And so those who want to spend real money make our lives easy, because they're going to spend money on ads and on
They're waking up to it, though.
Right. But whereas I enjoy working with individuals who want to write their books and market their books, and that's a whole different world completely. But there's many things that you say which I think is worth rehashing. Quinlia, I'm with you. She said, "Thank you for pushing me to create my newsletter, Christina." It's so true. And of course, she says, "You're amazing at analytics." She loves her numbers, as our Christina. I get so bored. I want clients. Look, that's also really bores the hell out of me, right? You're sharing golden nuggets, Queen Leah. She come on stage. My friends, you're seeing why I love events, right? There's no other way that you've seen all these great comments about Christina. If you were wondering, do I want to work with her? Suddenly, you see that the people who she's worked with say great things about her. And for some, that's enough to convince you to have that conversation. And even be ready to buy, because you really know what she does, right? I think that having people say good things about you is the key, because those referrals, those introductions, don't require us to sell anything. There's no hard sell. Literally. If the right person recommends you to their friend and says, right, Any must publish your book, there's no conversation. Now, the only conversation we had is, when are you going to be ready? When do you want to start? Here's what I charge. Here's the process. When are you going to be ready, right? There's no sales. There's no sales involved at all. It's a done deal. That's why I love referrals, and I think that anyone who can build referrals and repeat business, you're winning. See, there's one that you said, which I think is so important, Christina. Whatever you're going to do to generate these pipeline of customers, this pipeline of conversations, you're going to have to do it consistently. Whether it's newsletter, whether it's ads, whether it's blogs, I'm saying you're going to have to do it with intention for a long time. Really, like day after day, week after week. And I've been doing events for the last 4 years. Since the events came out, I was here. Yeah, literally, I was here. After 3 months, I was doing my first event. And I've done events every week for the last 4 years. That's why I can see I see the benefits without me even trying too hard. I just show up, I do what I do. We share information, we support our friends, and we make real friends. That's a key in business as well, making real friends. I'm very big on, I like to work with people that I like, right? If I don't know you, then I don't know you. I can't, it makes my life more difficult. Whereas if we're friends, almost I can think the way you think. And just talking is much easier, right? Everything's just easier when we can actually, be able to spend time together, of course, on your work, but also, just being friends, right? Cyrus says, marketing is something all businesses pay for, especially the ones which don't. I love that. So that's so true, right? Marketing is what everyone needs, and if you don't, if you're not going to pay an expert, then you have to pay for it somehow, either your time or in what you lose, miss opportunities, miss revenue that's going to stay on the board, right? That's stay on the table. There's another comment I saw somewhere else. Okay, this is what I want to get to. Again, Linda says, Christina is a well of information and support. Yay. Look, I love it when people say good stuff about us and our friends. I really do. Again, I think of the world you live in, my friends. How many days you see people who never say anything good about these experts that you're listening to, that you're watching? So I just find that remarkable, right? Say if you can get people saying good things about you, then you're winning, really. So this is another one from Queen Leah. She says, "I remove more followers than I gain these days." Me too, Queen Leah. Me too. And it's a deliberate activity when I sit there and say, right, if you don't come to my event, if you haven't been to my events in a year, why are we connected? Then remove that connection. Some will come back and say, "Oh, no, I like you." You're like, "I'll think again, maybe, but I probably won't." Because the data speaks for itself, right? But I think building that pipeline is everything for and there's many ways to do it. So it goes back to a point that we made earlier. Of course, it's about talking to the right people, the right people, the right people, the right people. Get in front of the right people, talk to the right people. Your life is so much easier. As my friend says.
Yeah, and I
So I
know,
think
and this
that's right. Go, please carry on.
no, this removing connections, adding connections, right? Again, if the account is not active, it's not really gonna do anything for your business. Now, do you have to become your followers and connections auditor and spend all that time doing that? It's like, no, it's usually an exercise that I do, every few days. I spend 5 minutes looking and going down, right? And I have a decent amount of followers, so it takes some time to do that. And sometimes I just do random searches by industry or, alphabetically and see what are these people, who's in my network, right? We didn't used to have to do this. Now we have to because LinkedIn is forcing us to. They want us to be visible to those that engage with us and to those that if and or those that we engage with. So if we don't engage uh, with a particular profile, or if they don't engage with us, it there is the feed will show up differently. They will see other things. We will see other things. So this LinkedIn is working pretty much like a For You page. If you whatever you click, you see more of. So that's what's going on. So it's unfortunate because technically right now, because it's not working perfectly yet, what we see is everybody that looks like us, people that do similar things with us. So how are those people gonna be our client if they're technically our competitors? So the secret there is go and engage with them. You're not gonna lose if you support a post that they wrote that you agree with, right? Or you give your different point of view, because now you're visible to people that are already engaging with them because you are in those comments. So that's the other thing. But the number of followers, it is true that it doesn't matter, but it's also untrue because they have benchmarks. If you have 10,000 plus, you're supposed to get a certain amount of minimum impressions, or so there is something that switches. So that is true. And they're published somewhere in LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn archives, but you can find them doing an AI search. It is by number of followers related based on number of impressions and so on. So you do want to keep growing your account and reach those benchmarks, to ever a bigger outreach. But at the same time, the days of saying I'm gonna be big on LinkedIn, I'm gonna connect with everybody, they're gone. They're a waste of your time, and it really dilutes your brand. If you're wondering why am I seeing all this garbage on my feed, is because you're engaging with the wrong thing, or you're not engaging at all,
Mm.
and your profile is all outdated, and LinkedIn formulated their own opinion about who you are and what you want to see.
Well, I'm sure that we're engaging. It's just like we're engaging with garbage. The point you just made. Again, people. I don't think many people realize that you have to show interest in the people that you want to work with. People have this. Everyone's got a funding model. Someone only want to connect with people who are in big business, for example. So someone who want to connect with those who have a big following. That's not unless you work with those people. Unless you have something that for that is really going to help the business and turn their lives around, you're wasting your time. And again, at the same time, some people just want to connect with anyone. Don't be that person. The trick is to connect with the right people and engage with them, support them. That way they see you. That way, when you message them, it's not going to be a cold DM, as you said earlier, Christina, right? But show interest in them. What's that saying? People won't care about you until they know how much you care about them. Literally. Saying if you want to, if you want me to see you, come to my event. And I've seen all of you here today. That's the reason I go through every name. When one day will click in my head, oh, that person. And eventually we'll meet. Eventually we'll have a conversation, and then that openness to your purpose. Can you help me? Can I help you? Those two questions must go together. We're very good at asking, "Do you want to buy my stuff?" That's not the question to ask. That's just not the. Really not. The question really is can I be friends with this person? That's a real question. That question I always ask myself. Before I accept connection request. Before I get into any sort of conversation with anyone. If I don't want to be friends with you, it's not going to happen. I'm not. Conversation died there and then, right? If you don't show interest in what I do, why would I believe that you're interested in what I do? You don't engage with my posts. You don't come to my events. You don't do anything that says I want to know more about what you do. Maybe you can help me. If we carry on just engaging with the content that we've always engaged with.
Annie, what are your views on lurkers? Uh-huh.
I'm not thinking. I know my answer. I don't like them. I don't like them. I think everyone that I see like events like this, right? I'll make a judgment very quickly. And again, don't forget, my friends. A lot of my friends turn up to my events. Otherwise they won't be my friends. Of course I go to the events too, right? I'm saying, so lurkers, I will give them a chance. Then one day, I will say to myself, not to them. I'll say to myself, "This is your chance, right? This is your chance. Either you say yes, or we stop being friends in that way." That's what I do with lurkers, full stop. But again, so don't forget that I have a super low value offer. I sell books on my client's book on launch day, for example. That's when I tend to decide whether that lurker is any good to me or not. Because launch day, our books are 99 cents or $199, right? If you're not willing to spend 99 cents to support me and my friends, my clients, my authors, I will take it that you're not going to spend £1,000 for me to publish a book. And if we never speak again, I lose nothing. I lose nothing at all. You know, I'm sure you lose nothing too, right? Because you know you're not really interested in support to me. Yeah, and that's my simple answer, Christina. So some people are information collectors. We know that, right? You know, because we do paid events for a reason. You know, and some people would never pay for anything. Again, they can go. Eventually, I will get rid of them. Sorry, friends. You know, if that's code news to you.
So everybody at this, everybody on camera is like, talking about me.
No. Look, I'm lucky. I really am, and so I feel whether it's blessed or lucky. I don't know what words you want to use, but I value my network because there was a time I used to make a habit of talking to everyone I connect with. At least you say, of course, you don't get to talk. That is easy. That's easy to do when you got 10 connections. It gets harder when you got 50. It gets harder when you got 100. When you got 1,000, you got no hope, right? But at least if you know 20 of those people and you've met them, and those 20 people are going to support you in what you do, you're halfway there. If those 20 people know to turn to you when they need you, that's a pipeline in itself, right? Of course, if they bring their friends through referrals, like I mentioned earlier, right? Now you have a steady stream of potential clients. So that's my answer on lurkers. What's your take on them?
On lurkers, well, my opinion has shifted over time. At first, I wasn't quite sure. I looked at the analytics. I looked at who stopped on my profile and all that. The best thing I actually ever did was getting rid of LinkedIn Premium.
Really? Well, for all the data that you get from it.
Yeah, well, I did. So I did get rid of LinkedIn Premium, but it was out of a challenge. I was working with a couple of clients, and they both didn't have premium. And I heard a couple of times, "Oh, I cannot do that because I don't have premium." And because I had premium since basically day one,
yeah.
I said to myself, "Okay, I need to try it. I need to see what's different, right?" And I think it was a blessing because I didn't get hung up on every profile view.
Yeah,
and I actually paid attention to those 3 profile views that are available for me to see daily. So I actually took action on those 3 and ended up converting one of them into a client, right? So before I had it and I took it for granted, so I didn't take action on those profile views at all. And the other thing is the lurkers reveal themselves, At a conversation, "I've been following you since you did the audio rooms." I didn't know, right? I didn't know. Not one like, never seen this person before.
No comments, nothing.
Yeah, because some people, they're not in the house. I mean, some people, they're not, they just read and move on, right? They don't stop, like, or comment. But because they're dwelling and, reading your stuff, LinkedIn is also measuring that. So more of your stuff is getting shown to them. So, I don't know. They'll basically reveal themselves to you. That's why it is so important, to batch your tasks. I keep my top. I have 4 or 5 topics, right? That are all connected. One is, starting a business. The other one is AI personal branding and AEO in your business. Then converting these conversations, right? Client pipelines and all that. And then the results, the transformations that your business achieves, right? So if you repeat that same thing over and over and over again, it has more chances to sink in with the lurkers and with those people that are engaging. But if you switch completely, today we talk about this and tomorrow we're talking about confidence, or we're talking about this amazing turkey that I cooked, right? So it goes all off, and it doesn't, it just dilutes your visibility more than reinforcing it.
For sure. So I agree with you there. But again, think of it like networking. So networking, you get your 1 minute pitch, sit there, whatever amount of time they give you to pitch. If you go there and talk about different things on different days, you're going to just confuse everyone, right? The aim, I think, marketing, the conversations you're going to have with the potential clients, even with new people, and the content you write, you want to get to a place where you trigger someone to say, yes, I will address this now. And I'll go to Christina to address this. Yes, I will. No, I'll commit to write my book mentally at least. I'll talk to Ed. Say that's what we're trying to do, really. That's when we book the conversations. That's when we see where how do we move forward from here. I said like being too general, being unintentional, being too vague. Being unclear. I think this is something that people don't understand. But I think you need total clarity about what you do, the what, right? And a lot of people they focus on the why. I can see why that's important, right? But the what. So what do you do? How do you help people? What's the difference you make? I'm talking about this tomorrow about Africa Business Talks. And I think the real issue that a lot of entrepreneurs are not clear. They can't describe to themselves, what they do, the need for it. The need for it's not just from not just from the people they want to serve, but also from what's the market potential. How many people have this problem? What are they willing to pay? And there's a question at the very end. What are you doing different to what others are doing in your sector? Why should they choose you, in other words, over someone else? I think a lot of people can't answer those questions about their business. We can answer some parts of it, but unless you can answer all of them and have a complete picture, that's the only way you're going to be able to talk in different settings, different modes, and different mediums. Newsletter, audio, live stream, blog. I'm saying, you need to really understand your audience, what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they're doing, what they need. That way you can frame what you say to fit the environment you're in. I think that you made a very good point, Christina. We all have a set number of things we talk about. Even though any can do 25 rooms in a week, if you listen carefully, I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying work on your mindset, work on your belief in yourself, and go big. I'm saying this is what Enid says all the time. Of course, there's relationship marketing and all of that. That's what. So listen to me. Go and watch my replays if you want to watch my replays on YouTube. There's hundreds of events we've done, if not thousands, and I'm saying the same thing just in different ways. We will need to have our framework, as you call it, Christina, that will go with
I love that you're using all the words that you scolded me for.
I'm just making sure you know that I was listening and I was looking at all the words.
You're gonna publish a dictionary, yeah? The Queen's English version.
And I know the words I don't like. No, but look, there's a place for all of them. Like I said earlier. You told me it depends who you're talking to. Using the words you use is a deliberate activity that you do to talk to certain people, which is more the bigger clients. But I'm quite clear for people that the individuals I want to work with, we use simpler terms, and it works for me. But I think this is an exercise for all of us. You have to go and find the words that your clients, that your audience uses. Because how they think of the problem must resonate with how you talk about the problem. There's,
Yeah, and you have to be able to use both,
yeah, I agree. I agree. I
You have
agree.
to be able to switch. Um,
Yeah.
the thing is, whether you are a business with 50 plus employees or you are a solo entrepreneur with an idea, building a presence for the first time on social media and telling people what you're building in public, you still have to have a routine
Mm.
that you do every day, a system, a list of tasks with a legend next to them that says this task is supposed to produce this
Mm.
over time, within a week, within 6 months. That's the framework, right? Each time, and then you have to choose. Like, okay, it's Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and I'm only doing tasks that are going to produce results in 3 months. If it's dangerous, right?
Mm.
It's
Mm.
good long term, but it's dangerous. So you have to balance. Can I do any tasks that might get my calendar filled this week or early next week? And even if they might be boring, or they might be, oh man, I'm bothering somebody that I'm saying, hey, we've been connected, but we never talked, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have to do those. That's the
Mm.
simplest call DM. There is, no harm, no foul. We're connected. I like your profile, or I think there is alignment, but we never met. This is who I am, right? Simple. You have to send 100 of those, 5 a day. But if you never do it, you'll never meet the person. And the response might just be, I just saw you live with Annie, or I just read your article. I'm actually doing this. If you don't schedule that time, if you don't build your capacity first, I mean, you can call it capacity framework, top of funnel, middle funnel, right? But if you don't say every day this is what I'm doing, that's on the schedule, and no matter what, I have to do this,
Mm.
then your pipeline or your list of people, it's empty, or it's just full of people that you're just warming up. There is never the next stage.
Mm.
We sent them an email, now they responded, it's getting warmer, hot, boom, booking the call. Now it's me with my personality that I have to win them over, right? So
Mm.
that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, if you don't plan it, if you don't build a routine, a system, a
Mm.
to-do list, whatever you want to call it, right? If you don't build any of those things, the calendar is gonna get maybe 2, 3 bookings a month, and it's all gonna be, let's get to know each other coffee chats, and then you think I'm doing something wrong. When in
You are.
reality,
Mm.
you have all the tools. You just have to rinse and
Yeah.
repeat and pay attention to what you're doing.
In reality, if that happens, you are doing something wrong. See, I think many of us are guilty of under effort. I know what I mean. We're underperforming. We're not trying hard. We're not doing enough. Full stop. We think some of us think we are, but we're just not. It's my simple system is I must have a conversation at least once a day with someone, at least once a day, right? And I think part of my conversations, which I think our friends should bear in mind, is your repeat conversation, your follow-ups is so important. It's not, if you've broken the ice with someone, whether that's in a DM or that's them commenting on your blog or something. I say, if you've broken the ice with someone, so you're no longer cold. I think there's a lot of value in going back to them, touching base with them sometime, right? But many of us are too shy, or I don't know, when something stops us going back, right? I think we need to learn to book those calls and do those calls. And it's only by doing the more calls we do, the more meetings we do, the more we learn about what is not working. I think that's a very important part. That's where we will learn. That's why I learned. You know, kill them with kindness, kill them with this feeling of that, leave them feeling better off after talking to you than before they met you. Brighten their day, whatever that means. That that just means being a nice person, being a caring person. People want to tell you about what they do. They really do, right? Give them the chance to do that. They would then you can tell them whatever you like after that. If you don't care about what they do, Cyrus, I'm with you. Like I said earlier, if you can't show that someone that you care about them, they won't care about you either. Whereas now, if you truly, if you can find that place in your heart to really care about people, your life will be so much easier. Especially on the follow up. Let's say it's like talking to a friend. And friends help each other. I know someone who says never sell to a friend. I'm like, you're wrong. You're just wrong. I sell to my friends because I can help my friends, and they can help me too. And in which case I buy from them too, right? But we need to move beyond the cold conversation and the hiding behind keyboards, whatever that means to you, right? I say this like you said earlier, this is a people business for all of us. The people who I see struggle the most, Christina, are the ones who don't have people skills. They don't want to spend time talking to anyone. But it's every person you meet, every person you connect with, every person you have a conversation with, it's an opportunity to better your business somehow. Not just by selling to them. Sometimes it's by buying from them. Sometimes it's by tapping into what they know, who they know, where they hang out. I'm saying, these are all different things we have to do. But get those conversations in your diary. And don't start counting your conversations. Oh, I had one conversation this week, Christina, and you know what? I didn't sell in that conversation. I'm so bad. Everything's terrible. No, you need 10 conversations at least, and then see whether you can get to the 4 out of 10 conversion. If you're not even converting one, then let's have a conversation with me or Christina. Don't come to me. Go to Christina. Really, come to me. Come to me when you have a book, right? I'll say, but literally have the conversation. We'll try and work out what's going on. Like, where am I losing them?
I think keeping a positive attitude. I think I was messaging you on WhatsApp and I said that April and May, they've been trying months for me, right? Because I was reassessing my content and there were a couple of bookings that, they just disappeared. They were canceled last minute, or the person kept saying, "Oh, I forgot. I cannot do it today. I'll book it later," or just no show, right? And a few years ago, I would have said, "Oh, that's it. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to leave it alone." But then I learned to keep the positive attitude and understand that they're not canceling because it's something that I did, right? They're canceling because something is going on in their lives. They're not ready. Maybe they wanted to, invest and now they're financially not able to, or something terrible might have happened, a friend, a relative, we don't know why these appointments are canceled. And so now I do take the time to actually message them afterwards and let them know that it's okay, that things happen. And so what happened is that a couple of them rebooked and then recanceled, but now I'm working with them. So it took, having to deal with this roller coaster of they're booking, they're canceling, they're booking, they're canceling. Just one person. It was 6 different people. So 2 I was able to convert, and I'm still working on others. Right? But so, and it was not because something was wrong or something in my DM or anything like that. And that really made me realize I already knew this. Sometimes we're very good at telling people how things are and calming them down, but making realize that's just it. It's not, none of this is personal. Things happen, and your job as the person that is running this business is, is everything okay? Do you want to reschedule? If they don't want to reschedule, trust me, they won't even respond, right? But if something really happened and maybe they feel bad, that message is what's going to make them reschedule.
Yeah,
So
no, for sure. I think we've all been through that. Where people will cancel. I think I will say this. The mark of a good marketer is the one who can keep getting told no and still stay happy and still stay pleasant and still say, that's what marketers really do, right? Because 99% of people we talk to every day, we just say no and walk straight past us. Whatever we know, say, you mentioned your newsletter earlier. Out of 700 readers, how many are going to call you today? I'm saying, who knows, right? But, it's easy to turn on them mentally, at least. Going back to the lurkers you talked about earlier as well. It's easy for us to say, "Well, I don't like you because you let me down." But I used to be there, but I've had to learn. Just this roll with the punches. This is life, right? Like I said, there's any reasons why they could have cancelled. And it might just be that they didn't feel well that day. It might just be that the child wasn't well. It might just be that something else happened. The employee, something went wrong, right? So but then even when I say be open to go again, be open to the follow up, be open to rearranging that meeting. But I think
people,
I think we all know deep down when someone is not really interested, right? And I think that this is one thing in marketing, in business as a whole. We need brutal honesty with ourselves. Am I talking to the right person? If you are, then all sorts of conversations can happen. If your answer to that question is no, then there's no point even asking myself, so what can I learn from that? You can't learn anything because the wrong person. It doesn't matter that they said no. It doesn't matter. Everything else falls out the window, right? So talking to the right person, that's the first thing we have to be honest about. And then after that, can I really help them? Now, if you can really help them, then I would say follow up. Keep this conversation going. Saying again, maybe because of the business I do, because I do books. If I know that you're writing a book, I will keep with you. But sometimes for years, literally for years, I will literally invite you to all my events. I will have conversations with you. I'll DM you. I'll try and move you to my WhatsApp because that's where my friends really live. So literally, I will spend the effort if I know I can help you. But if I know I can't help you, I'm not good. There's no point in me doing any of that at all. Because I can't help you. You have no plans to. You're never going to need me. Again, like many of us lie to ourselves. I spoke to 10 people, but the fact that none of them interested in what I do, and I can't help any of them. You haven't failed. Go and find some of the right people, and we see what the results really look like then. So I think just being honest with ourselves, it goes a long way. It will affect the conversations we have, and affect the results for those conversations.
there's this trend. I don't know if you've seen all those posts out on LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn talking about cringe and making fun of LinkedIn users.
Tell me now, what have I missed? I missed many
Where the
things.
conversation is like, a lot of people busting their profile, saying that they are evangelists, this, evangelists, that, just really beefing up the headline. And then it talks about a lot of cold DMs, right? And so, like on TikTok and other platforms, it's just making fun. It's a parody of what's going on LinkedIn. But the thing is, then the article continued with, actually, these people spending time making fun of these, they're not really monetizing whatever they are, while
Yeah.
the very people they're making fun of, that they're showing up every day with content, are closing deals and building relationships. It's just that it's a LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is not your business, right? But you can leverage it for your business. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Mm.
that
No,
your business is not LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is where you find people that are interested in the type of business that you do.
yeah, yeah,
And
no,
so that's the whole confusion. They don't understand that the LinkedIn is part of the ecosystem, or where you're how you're showcasing your abilities, what you're doing, and where you're finding people to have those conversations, and you can introduce them to your services.
look, I'll say, for anyone who thinks like that, LinkedIn will always be a safer, more credible place than any other platform. For the reasons that I hope we all know, which is that when I look at all of you, I see everyone's name. LinkedIn doesn't let you use funny names. Now, some people will try, by the way, right? So, on LinkedIn, we know who you are, where you are, what you do. So we might even know how you do it. That's what I'm saying. That now LinkedIn gives you real information, and if you go on TikTok, you can be talking to anyone. They could be from anywhere in the world, and I mean, Paulette talks about how she has 1,000 Tom Cruise, people named Tom Cruise attached to her account. I'm saying, how many can you have, right? This every celebrity has many alter egos on funny platform, on TikTok especially. On Facebook, again, unless you know the people personally, you don't know who's who really. So LinkedIn is a whole different ballgame. LinkedIn is a place where if you have a solution, people will come to you for help, especially if you show up and share with them how you can help them. That's the basic marketing. Let's talk to Cyrus before we go. I do want to mention Jason. Jason, thank you for joining us. Yeah, to go. I'm sure now. I don't know what her name is. It starts with a V. So she said, "This I say thank you for inviting me, Christina." It was like I find while Cyrus is talking, I find out this lady's name. Okay, now Piroska. Yeah, Piroska V. You know who that is, Christina?
Yes, I've invited a few of my Substack friends,
Yay! Well
new
done,
friends.
you. Well done, you. Well done, you. Need to get of course, many of your other friends are here as well, so it's all good. It's all good. Let's talk to Cyrus. Cyrus, what do you want to add to? Of course, I know you do marketing, you do podcasting, you do branding. So, talk to us. What can we learn from you in terms of how we turn our conversations into business?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me, Annie?
Perfectly, my friend. Perfect.
Hi Annie. And hi Christina. Um, Thank you so much for the great wealth of knowledge that you guys just shared with our community. In terms of like what you can learn from me, not much to be honest. I I'm still learning. I started in 2010. I was dabbling in this and that, and then I wasn't serious about it. In 2019, imagine 9 years it took me to find my way, right? Um, in 2019, I started seriously, and when I when I started seriously, I got results. So what I do is that I help authors and small businesses set up their podcasts and make money out of the podcasts. Okay, because your podcast is the main hub and can be the main hub for your business. So um, I just wanted it's been such since start, and I was thinking when you go to events like this, everyone's trying to find a hack um, to beat the algorithm, right?
Hmm.
So, um, but not many people stop to think they are the problem. Right? It took me 9 years to understand that. I was the problem, and whenever I don't get results now, I still am the problem, right? So the sooner you get that clarity, the sooner your business will grow. I promise you that, right? So you need to learn that your business problems start with you and they end with you. They are solved by you, right? So whenever it's not working, you're the solution. And if you haven't found the solution yet, you are the problem, right? Sometimes you need to get out of your own way, right? On your way to success. Because on LinkedIn, what I've found out is that there is a lot of competitors, lots of egos, lots of business problems that have not been solved yet, and yet people are still after likes and follows, right? So um, it's not the followers, just like my more experienced friends mentioned earlier. Um, it's not about followers. It's not about likes, right? And it's about how you send in the signal. And if you're not um, getting follows and likes, it's okay. That's not where the focus should be. Are you getting customers? Because it's not a business if you don't have customers. It's not a company if you don't have a product to sell, right? So if so, LinkedIn and also Instagram is full of hobbyists. What's a hobbyist? A hobbyist is someone who looks like to have a business or wants to have a business, but they're not selling because they're not selling anything. They're just there to find followers, and they do get. And in life, you get what you're after, right? So, but if you're being too generic and you just after followers, your followers can't pay for your bills, right? Your followers can't solve your problems, and um, if you don't sell people anything, you won't have the social proof. If you don't have the social proof, more people won't find you. And the moment you stop looking for people, they will start looking for you. Because me, you, and everybody else, we should be turning into something and someone people are after and they're trying to get. So how do you turn yourself into such person? You become this problem solver. You find a niche and you you become above average in that niche and start solving problems. And you charge, you don't charge, that's not really important. You solve a person's problem and you really help them and they will spread the word, I promise you. So if if you stop looking for people, people will start looking for you and they will start finding you. So most of the um, posts that I can see on LinkedIn is the posts that people self promote. Um, Self promoting is good, but like 10%, like out of every 10 posts that you are putting up there, just make one about you. Because if you make it about you, you turn automatically you turn into something that other competitors hate, a competitor, right? So then you will be surrounded by broke competitors who will not become your customer because in their view you are a competitor, you are competition, right? And psychologically they're like deep down they will avoid you, and you're wondering why they're not approaching you. Of course they are avoided because they're busy avoiding you, right? So if you make it about you, they won't approach you. Okay, being approachable is uh, being open to receiving others, right? So um in my view, and by the way, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong. I might be right. I don't know. In my view, if you solve their problem, and if you give people what they want, they will give you what you need. Okay, that's a really age-old rule in business, right? Give them what they need, and they will give you what you want, right? And I'm going to finish on this. You might be the expert, fantastic expert in your area, right? But if you don't solve a problem, you will turn into a best kept secret. You want to be explored. You want to be discovered. You don't want to be a kept secret, right? So, and just because you've written a book, just because you've created a fantastic system, doesn't mean people will join you. They need to start trusting you. If they can't trust you, they won't respect you. And if they won't respect you, they won't recommend you. Thank you.
Couldn't have said it any better. Very, very cool.
Agree. I mean, everything you mentioned, Cyrus, makes a difference, right? And I love your point about stop looking for people, and then people start looking for you. I mean, that's an important one for us to bear in mind. A lot of people they're hustling so hard that you turn people off. And but I think that saying means different things to different people, right?
Hmm.
I think for me, it partly means stop trying to sell, be more interested in people, really. And then those people, people who need you will come to you because you show you care about people, full stop, right? Your point about people not having a service that really helps people, Cyrus, this is one of the biggest issues I see today. I banged on about it today already. I'm going to bang on about it tomorrow, probably the day after that as well, right? Because I think it's a real problem.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Some people have the products, but they don't have an offer. Like
mm,
they don't make it look like a delicious offer that you're gonna enjoy and you're gonna be you're gonna be benefiting from. And so if you're like everybody else, if you do what everybody else is doing, you will get it. You will be getting what everybody else is getting, right? So
not a lot.
look at me. No, honestly, everyone's on LinkedIn and
Mm,
on Instagram showing the best version of their life. They do not show their struggles, and
mm,
people connect with you with their flaws and struggles. If you don't show them your struggles, they
yeah,
feel like you're a polished version. You are out of reach. You are too high to be touched. Okay.
yeah,
And they feel like you are much, much higher than their level, and that makes you almost impossible to approach. But if you show them, look, I'm someone like you, right? Blood and sweat. Okay, I hustle like you do, right? And show them how much you care, because just like I posted in the comments, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
yeah. Again, I think part of that is one of the biggest problems I see in terms of experts, geniuses at what they do. Normally, coaches. Again, I can maybe they don't want customers like us, Cyrus, right? Well, but I think being able to show the world I work with people like you. I think that's equally important. There are a lot of people, and they say they only want to connect with high value people in their eyes. You know what I'm saying? No. That puts me off in the first place. But your second point about creating an offer, I think that's very important. Like creating an offer that makes sense to the people that you're talking to. If you there, a lot of people don't even know the transformation that they're trying to achieve for their clients. They might notice what they're trying to solve, solution wise, but they haven't asked themselves a question that every customer will ask themselves. So what? How's my life going to change as a result of this? So when we can articulate, a rational response. So it's a big question. What do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? What difference does it make? And who do you do it for? And what is what you're doing worth to them? How are you going to transform their lives? Those are questions I think most entrepreneurs will run away from you and look at you from. Christina, please feel free.
Well, here's the thing. I say this very often. We really have to understand the culture of the social media platform we are using, but also the culture of the network that we have built and who's currently engaging with us. Who did we send the last 20 connection requests to, right? Because we tend to assume, because you've been here for a long time, I've been here for a long time, Sarah's been here for a long time. So we tend to assume that people know our topics and know what we're doing, and because we have a circle of friends that are all solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and they all have offers. Cyrus has the podcast, and he has the events and the books. Uh, we think it's normal, right? When we open our computers and we log into LinkedIn, that's what we think is normal. And instead, uh, lately, I realized, being in the comments or listening to conversation, I don't necessarily comment all the time, but I definitely read them and engage in DMs with people. Uh, what I'm noticing is that there is a lot of newcomers to the platform. And mostly because so many people got laid off. Before they were passively browsing LinkedIn, now they're here every second looking for work, right? And they just landed after a couple of years to something that they don't understand. They're confused. Why are all these people sending messages and doing lives, right? Or what's going on? Why am I getting a message from somebody I don't know? Some people are just not used to it. So we have a certain network, a certain group of people that is following us that understand, the environment that we're in. But also, there are a lot of people that are freshly active again on the platform, that they don't understand the conversation that we've been having for 2 years about LinkedIn new algorithm, 360 brew, relevancy, and all that. And then you're still using hashtags, although hashtags, they're no longer functional LinkedIn. So we see all these things happening because people that they really haven't paid attention, and now they're in the platform, and the way we approach them and the conversations that we're having with them, they have to be different. So we have to learn how to speak different languages to different people based on where they're here. So the first question that I ask somebody is, how are you enjoying LinkedIn, right? What do you use the platform most these days? Because somebody can have a title on their LinkedIn profile, or they just call themselves coach because I'm going to become a coach, and they started, right? But you don't know their view of the platform, of how they're experiencing it. If maybe they're frustrated because they used it 3 years ago and it was great, and now they don't understand what's going on anymore. So it's very important to really ask the basic questions sometimes, not just assuming when you meet somebody new. I'm just gonna end it with it because I think this event would require, a lot more, but we've been up for 2 hours.
How time goes when you're having fun, right? As they say,
Yes.
But there'll probably be part three to this, I'm sure. I feel like this is part two of the conversation we started. But this is probably the most important part of marketing that people really need to be honest about, and to learn more about. But we've done well. Mr. Cyrus, if you want to leave us a last message before we leave today, my friend, feel free.
Um, yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. And secondly, I was going to say, um, if you are into marketing, or if you're not into marketing, if you're into sales, or if you're not into sales, it doesn't matter. What really matters is serving your business and serving the cause that you are serving, right? In any shape or form that you can. And to make that happen, you must, and that's a non-negotiable, right? You must study half an hour to an hour a day. That gives you knowledge, but more important than knowledge, it tweaks your mind in a way that you begin, after a short while, you will begin to think like a marketer, right? Like I said earlier, marketing is one of those things. All businesses pay for it, especially the ones who don't. So, Seth Godin is a good point to start from. and also Lean Marketing, Lean, Lean Marketing, and Seth Godin. These are really good books to read on marketing, to change your mentality and improve your mentality about the business that you have, because most of you guys who are listening live right now, or are gonna be listening to this on repeat for days or years to come. Please remember, nobody knows your business and nobody cares about your business as much as you do, right? So serve your business and your business will serve you. Thank you.
I press buttons. It takes a while for anything to move on my screen. Don't know why. Anyway, so then, Cyrus, I truly agree with you. I will say, if I come to you, Christina, that I think marketing is the primary job of a business. I tell people every day, because it's the truth in my life, right? So every day I get up, I will do my mindsets, mindset stuff. So I remember my meditating, my gratitude, my journaling. And then after that, the first hour of every day is spent on the business. Is doing things for the business. A lot of people will not spend any minute to do working on their business. They're working in their business. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. So they'll be doing something that is getting your name out there, like you said, Cyrus, getting more people to know that, more the right people to know that you can help them. To understand, your approach, right? All of that, and then you can do client work. Because if you just go and do client work, you'll be busy one day, next day you won't. That's what happens. And part of this, the working on your business is putting those conversation funnels in place. Who's ready to buy? Who's interested? Who is who's a potential that could become the customer in good time. We have to ask all those questions and answer them somehow, right? Christina, so I give you the mic to have the last word, my friend. You're the star of the show.
Oh, just, thank you everybody for coming and asking your questions. I'm sure that Annie will review the comments, and so will I later on, and trying to answer some of the questions that we didn't get to answer. But if you have any more questions on the topic, please, feel free to ask those in the comments or DM either Annie or myself. And thank you again for joining us. We went a little bit over, but it definitely was. It definitely, the topic asked for it. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Cyrus. Thank you for coming up as well, my friend. I'm waiting for my camera, Cyrus. I'll sound like you in a couple of days. So I bought the camera that you told that you recommended, or that you showed me.
Have you set this up yet?
No, it hasn't come yet. I bought it.
Hasn't.
Bye, Annie. Thank you.
You take care, Christina. So I was meant to have it last week. Then the geezer said he's going to send it on Wednesday. So I'll get it Wednesday. Nice, anyway, nice. Let me end the show and then let our friends go. Take care, everyone. So see you in a couple of weeks.
Guys. Bye.
2 weeks time, we're back here again, right? Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.
And he sees you. He sees you. He sees you. From the children with no voice in borrowed rooms, to the magazines that carry their truth. 25 years of the same steady hand, finding the ones who fell through the cracks of the plan. From Mitcham to Croydon, from London to the world.